Five, four, three, two, one.
Oh, getting tangled up. Getting my wires tangled up. Hello, welcome, bienvenue. It's Armist Inquisition time yet again. Episode 162 on Sunday the 6th of December. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
And I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight we've got author and researcher Mark Anthony Wyatt via the magic of iPhones. How are we doing, Mark?
Hi, Phil.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hey.
We had some technical issues before we got started. Tell you what, I'm dead impressed though. I mean, the video and the audio quality is better than Amish Matt's.
I know.
And he's just got a brand new laptop. So thanks for coming, Mark. It's nice to meet you finally. We've been chatting on Insta, haven't we?
We have. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
No trouble. I was we were just discussing what we might be discussing, and
yeah,
I thought it'd be nice to talk a bit about Cornwall, to be honest, because you have some expertise in this area. Being
I believe I can say that without exaggerating. I believe so. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, because you've written two books about the different sort of strange going-ons. The Spirit of Cornwall,
yes.
Volume 1 and 2, and I mean, for people. Because we have most of the people listening are in the States or in the Canada or not in the UK. So for those people, Cornwall's like the southwestern tip, isn't it? Like that foot that protrudes into the Atlantic.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Cornwall and what's so special about it. What sort of made you want to write two books about the place?
Okay, I'll try and keep it short and sweet. How did I get involved? Well, my family, part of my father's family were sort of Cornish related, and he always loved the place, and he eventually took us down there when I was a teenager, and the place just, I don't know if you know St Ives, around the very far west. It's a beautiful town, and it's just like for anybody. I mean, once you see it for the first time, especially if you approach it by the little train on the coast, it's embedded in you for life, you know. And as I say, family down there as well. So it just became second home to me, really. And over the years, I sort of learned more and more about it. And obviously, I've always been interested in the supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to label it. And it sort of goes hand in glove with Cornwall. To anybody who doesn't know Cornwall, it's really, you know, if you come to America and you talk about Cornwall, a lot of people haven't got a clue. I mean, fair enough, you know. I mean, we haven't got a clue about places over here sometimes. But it is, some people would refer to it as part of England. Well, politically, yeah, it is, obviously. But sort of traditionally and originally it's own separate country.
Wow.
But it is, you know, a lot of Celtic sort of blood there, connections to the Irish and the Scots and the Bretons just across in France on the far western tip of France. Yeah. So it's a very sort of distinctive place. It's not England, you know, and I say that as an Englishman. It's not England, although it's, you know, the population is constantly changing all the time, and so many of the people who actually live in Cornwall aren't really, you know, they don't go back many generations. There's a hardcore that do, but if you trace them back, you know, they came in from other places too. We all did. We're all immigrants.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it. All of us. You know, I don't like this flag waving. really too much. I mean, a bit of fun sometimes, but we're all immigrants. We all come from somewhere else. So, but yeah, be proud of where you come from. That's fine.
Mm. There's something it's always sort of intrigued me with Cornwall, that there is sort of this, like a cultural demarcation. And it's like
on
this,
the river. Yeah.
Like this question of identity. It's like, if I think about myself and my own identity, I don't really, although I am a Lancastrian, because I'm born and raised and live in Lancashire, it's not like at the forefront of my mind if someone asks you about your identity. But I get the impression that with Cornwall, it very much is the opposite of that.
Definitely. They see themselves as, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. The people I've met who were born there, and and it varies. It depends who you speak to, but most of them would see themselves as Cornish first, British second, and not English.
Not English.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, most people I know, I lived there for 20 years, and they might follow the English cricket team or they definitely follow the English rugby team, which is quite ironic, really. Although occasionally they do have 3 or 4, it has happened in recent years, they've had 3 or 4 Cornish guys in the England rugby team. So, they don't tend to see themselves as English, although strangely enough, my own family, they're probably more, in some respects, they're more British than I am, because they're very, they like the Royals, and they like to go up to London and have a trip up to London, whereas I lived quite near London, and London, I haven't really got much of an affection for it, really. I spent a lot of time in London, and I'm not that keen on it, But, I mean, in my youth, I was in London a lot, sort of seeing bands and watching football matches. Yeah. But I never really felt at home there. So I sort of feel at home in Surrey, because it's rural, and you've got the hills and the forests and woods and whatever.
Do you think that's because of? Is that maybe because of the size of the place? Because there's so many. London's such a massive place.
I'm not big on crowds, really. I don't really. I mean, well, my only experiences of London were always sort of popping up there for the evening from Guildford. It's like an hour. Yeah. Well, when I was younger, we used to. Well, you could do this in those days, but we would go up to see a band, and that was always a struggle, because you had to sort of get right across London, and it was they in those days anyway, it seemed that they drove like idiots. I can remember being at Shepherd's Bush. I'm digressing now. I was at Shepherd's Bush, where the BBC were at one time anyway, and it's like a huge roundabout there, and I was probably 18 or 19. And I was driving up there for the first time, and there was about 8 lanes, and I had to be in the outside lane closest to the middle, I think. And I was in the number 1 or 2, and somebody said, no, you've got to go right. You've got to go right. And I'm like, well, I can't. There's like 10 taxis in my way. And he said, just put your foot down, shut your eyes, we'll be fine. And more or less did that. And everyone beats you, but like everyone's doing it. You have to drive like an idiot. So, I was never very keen on driving up there. But then coming home, I used to have an old Rover, and it was very, very fast. And I used to get home back to Guildford in, I don't know if you know the A3.
Not particularly.
It's quite a fast road. It goes from London to Portsmouth via Guildford. Yeah. And we used to fly down it, literally fly down it, So we would be back in like 20, 25 minutes or something. So, but you can't do that now.
No, it's very naughty. If there's any policemen watching, we don't do that anymore.
No, I haven't done it ever.
No, I take it this was when you were a younger man.
Oh, much younger.
Because we were only saying last week. We were only saying last week that a lot of us had a tendency to drive a bit silly under the age of 25.
Oh, definitely. I wonder sometimes if maybe we shouldn't have licenses until we're 23, 24, maybe. Yeah. It probably depends on the person, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, James Hunt. Do you remember James Hunt, the world racing champion?
Yep.
Yeah.
He took his driving test 5 times and failed. Yeah, true story. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so I've digressed. You were asking about Cornwall. We've ended up on James Hunt.
Yeah, Cornwall. It seems to be that it's, a lot of writers have this affinity with Cornwall. I remember reading once somewhere that possibly Tolkien had based the Shire on Cornwall. The Shire from Lord of the Rings.
Did he? Oh,
I read it
no
somewhere.
idea about that.
I read it somewhere. It might have been nonsense. But yeah, I mean, what is it? Is it because it's just so dramatic? The landscape is so...
It's a strange thing. It's like the area I really, really love in Cornwall. I mean, I like it all, but my favourite area is West Penwith. That's right down the far west. So you've got like the Land's End bit up to just past St Ives. And it's very... You've got a bit of everything there. You've got wonderful beaches, of course, but you've got these rugged cliffs. You've got granite absolutely everywhere. You've got these massive hills, sort of bare hills of just huge lumps of granite all over them, which obviously you've got the other end of Cornwall as well in Bodmin, around that area. But yeah, it's just, it seems to... It just has an atmosphere, which you almost, like once you cross that river and you get in there, it's... Especially if you're crossing through Bodmin Moor, and if you do it in the winter on a sort of really miserable sort of day, you get a better glimpse of what it's really like. I mean, I used to I still do if I get a chance when I'm there, just going clambering around on, there's a couple of hills I really like, Rose Wall, which is just outside St Ives, and also Tren Crom, they're both there. And you can get up on the top there and you can climb around on these massive lumps of granite, and you can see both sides of a peninsula. Depending on the weather, sometimes you can't see anything. And there's a very strange feeling up there. And it's, if you trace it back and if you look at what used to go on up there, it's almost like it's been imprinted on the stone somehow, because you've got that feeling of otherworldliness. I can't describe it any other way. It's just really quite creepy up there.
I was thinking, is there like maybe some certain places have like an imprint of mythos that surrounds them? I remember going to Tintagel Castle when I was a kid, which is related to the Arthurian legend and myth. Yes, all right, I was a small boy, but you get this feeling of like wonderment, of awe, because of the myth that surrounds the place. Yeah, and I think a lot of people get it with Glastonbury as well, just over the border in Somerset, don't they? I wonder if that's something to do with it. Yeah,
I'd never been to Glastonbury until like about 2 or 3 years ago, and I'd heard so much about it, and it was an amazing place. I mean, just wonderful place. I mean, just so strange. We had a very strange experience there, actually. Not sure I should mention it here, but we sort of found ourselves... if I change... I'll give you a quick rundown of what happened. It's very odd, but I'm not going to give any names. But basically, I met a guy online, sort of like chatting about all this sort of stuff, and he was a fascinating guy, very, very knowledgeable. And he said that if you're ever in town, just get in touch, and we can, we meet for coffee and have a chat. And anyway, so we did, and we found this little cafe, and he had I don't know, I can't be careful what I say really, but he had a lady with him, and she was extremely knowledgeable as well. I mean, really knowledgeable. She was very well read, and knew everything about the place. But we arranged to meet up in this pub later, and it was like this really ancient pub. I wish I could remember the name, but it's fantastic stonework, and I mean, like seriously old pub with amazing windows and everything. So we get in there, and I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but she starts having an argument with these people at the bar. She was a bit peculiar, to say the least, but she started having this argument. and it got more and more heated. And then the guy that was with us, who's her boyfriend, I suppose, well, he basically, and he wasn't the biggest guy, he was trying to sort of defend her. Not physically. I mean, these were really big guys, but they weren't being violent. They were just having this severe argument. And we were sort of stuck in the middle of this. And we'd only just met them. But to them, they probably thought we were like old friends. And, you know, and we thought we were going to get dragged into this thing, you know. So that was not a good experience. I haven't even given you half of it, but it was like a very odd experience. So sort of put me off the place a bit.
Did you go up the tour?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was very steep-sided. I didn't expect it to be so steep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a trek.
Yeah, and it was like there's like a little walkway through the building at the top, isn't there? And it was quite cold up there, and you know, yeah. Fascinating views up there.
Oh, it's nice, yeah.
Yeah. Have you looked into the history of Glastonbury?
Not too much. Phil's your man for history, I think.
I read a book last year called The Avalonians, and it was based. It was sort of giving the history of the resurgence that it had in the I think late 19th century, and the characters who were behind that, and establishing the festival and whatnot. It's very interesting. A lot of sort of occult, esoteric links with Glastonbury, because you've got the Glastonbury Abbey and the Joesph of Arimathea myth, and you've got the Arthurian connection.
I like the myth because it's connected to Cornwall as well. I've looked into that a bit. I'm a bit rusty on it at the moment, but if you look at, you know, Cornish place names and just sort of local legends from places that weren't connected, you know, like they are nowadays, everyone can talk to anyone. But in those days, they weren't really connected, but they have the same basic story that Jesus, as a boy, visited Cornwall with his uncle. That's what you're talking about, isn't it? Who was Joesph of Arimathea. And people like to write that off and say, oh, it's all rubbish. But it's like, you know, these stories have been handed down from generation to generation. Even in recent years, elderly people in Cornwall have told people who I know, well, in fact, I'll get onto that in a minute, but I know a guy who was really, really brilliant researcher and writer in Cornwall. He died in his 80s, like a couple of years ago. He was like my mentor in some ways, you know. He met elderly people who told him that their parents had told them that Jesus had been to their town, you know. And there's quite a few, or village, there's quite a few places like that in Cornwall. I'm trying to think of the name of it, on the Fowl Estuary, the FAL Estuary. There's a very sort of pretty little church right on the banks. St. Just, I think. I might have got that wrong. St. Just in Roseland, I think it is. Right. It's a part of Cornwall I'm not really familiar with. It's the other end, really, the other side, really. But he was supposed to have landed there, and the rock that he trod on when he got out the boat is supposedly, well, they've swapped it now and they've taken it off to some museum, so to say. But the thing is, I don't know if you know about the crosses, the Christian crosses, the old ones in Cornwall. You won't see them anywhere else in the world, because if you look at them carefully, it's got Jesus on the cross, but it's not the 30-something Jesus that we're sort of used to. It's a boy. It's the boy Jesus. Right. And I say that as somebody who's I'm not really religious or anything, but I'm just fascinated by that connection. And it's all connected to the tin mines, because obviously they were his uncle was supposed to have been a decurion. A wealthy man, yeah. Yeah, he was like a business leader.
Yeah.
And he was working with the Romans. And basically, he was doing business in Cornwall and also up in Glastonbury, up towards Glastonbury. So if you look around Cornwall, you see a lot of these crosses in the old churches with like the little boy on the cross. I mean, I think it's just a symbol. You know, we're not saying he was killed as a boy or anything, but you'll see those in. Actually, I was wrong. I think you'll see them in Brittany as well. And there are legends that he visited Brittany, which would make sense, because there are links. If you go back to, like, I don't know, my dates are rusty, but say 400, 500, 600, sort of the Arthurian sort of era, and there were lots of battles because the original Brits. I always get confused by always, but the original Brits were being pushed out of the better farmland in the southeast and more central and whatever. And there were, over a period of, like, I don't know, a couple of 100 years or more, those tribes were pushed further and further west. Yeah. And that's how they ended up in Wales and Cornwall. They're the same tribe. They're like cousins. But it happened over a long period of time, and they were gradually pushed back into the areas where the farming wasn't so good, and so they ended up being fishermen and miners and so on. I've lost my track, but that's what happens when they were all pushed. Oh yes, so basically, at one point, I'm not quite sure of the history on this, but they were sort of routed in a battle. It was probably around Tintagel that you mentioned, because there's Slaughter-Bridge. Is there just outside near Camelford. Camelford was supposedly Camelot. That's one of the stories. And there's talk of these rebels, these chief tribal people who had been fighting, who was basically sort of doing a Dunkirk, but like earlier. They were sort of leaving from Cornwall to get, you know, or from probably more likely from Devon or whatever. And they were going over to France, as we know it, which was Gaul. And that became like Little Britain, almost, you know, Breton, hence Brittany. So again, they're cousins as well. So they are, and there's so many sort of odd little links with all that. Even in my personal life, you know, just weird things like there was a I don't know whether this means anything, but some years ago I was looking at some stuff about Brittany, and you know the French play this game with boules or something like that, where they sort of, like a pub game, they sort of throw this ball thing down a pitch, whatever it is. Like tossing stones or something. And I was looking at these old guys who were playing it, and I was sort of quite amazed, really, that they looked like my own father and my granddad. Like almost, you know, they could pass as brothers, sort of thing, you know. They had a certain look about them. You know, because I'm quite good at spotting that in people. And the Cornish have a certain look, some of them. Yeah. And I'm actually, I don't know why, but I mean, it's not always accurate. But, I mean, I'll give you an example of that. I was watching a US cop show years ago. It was one of the really good ones that followed Hill Street. I can't remember what it was now. It followed Hill Street. Same writer, Mark Frost, I think. And there was a guy on there, the main star, and he was a ginger guy. And there was just something about it. I didn't know who he was, but I sort of recognised his face as being Cornish. I just knew that he had some Cornish connection. And when the credits came up at the end, I had no idea who he was. He had a Cornish surname. So there is something in it. You can sort of... and I know it sounds crazy, but I heard this when I was a kid as well from a bloke who said that he could spot somebody who came from Coventry. Yeah, I mean, can you believe it? Seriously, this was back in the 60s, and he had like a very high success rate as well. I suppose in the old days, people were more set in their areas, you see.
Yeah, we're much more mobile now, aren't we? Hey, I'll tell you what, we're much more mobile now, but I think we don't realise often just how, going back to the sort of Jesus coming to Cornwall, how mobile people were back then. Because I mean,
it's amazing. Yeah, we think of them as being in the Dark Ages or whatever. They weren't. They had amazing culture, and before the Romans came, they had an amazing culture, and the Romans just crushed them. And the Normans did the same. They and I've got French DNA, so supposedly my surname came over with the French, I believe.
Right.
So, which could tie into the Breton thing, maybe. I don't know.
We know from talking to Eric Klein about the Bronze Age, 1177 BC, that the tin from the UK was being traded with lapis.
Oh, that's right.
Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
There was a real massive trading network across the Mediterranean.
Yeah. They walked. What they did, they took the tin. Well, as I think your man said, he said they had more local places that they didn't have to go to Cornwall all the time, so they had other places who had it. But I know that because I did a lot of research in my book on this. It's all a bit rusty now. I tend to forget things after a while, but just little bits stick. It's like a bit of mud sticks. But they used to travel to Marseille, around that area, from the Middle East up to Marseille. Then they would go across Europe. They would literally walk or ride, whatever, up to the north coast of Brittany, and then they'd go from Brittany over to Cornwall, and then from Cornwall to Glastonbury or whatever, So the tin. I mean, there were legends. Now, that's the other thing. See, Cornwall's got these links with the Middle East, which comes from the tin thing. But you've got, for example, saffron cake. I don't know if you ever tried saffron cake. No. It's like a Cornish delicacy. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful cake. So it's like a sort of yellowy type, saffron. And that is quite common in Palestine, and it's also common in Cornwall, but it's not common in England, really. Right. So there are these little links all the time, and there are legends of Jews working in the mines in Cornwall, and that's what the knockers, the knockers legend comes out of these miners who they think it was. These little creatures were like the ghosts of these old Jews. Well, that was one of the sort of bits of folklore that sort of survived, And if you think about, we've got to be careful what to say, but if you think about the way they were described, they described these characters, these knockers, and I'm not going to say it, but facially. There was a way that they looked a certain way, which you could say was the same as these guys from the Middle East.
Right.
So, it's...
I'm not familiar with the knockers.
Oh, I've not heard of that.
Well, I'm familiar with some, but I think we're talking about different ones.
So the knockers were these creatures that lived in, or supposedly might still do, They lived in the mines, and they haunted the mines, if you like. And the miners, this goes back thousands of years. Wow. The miners would hear like a tapping sound, and they would take that as a warning that there was danger imminent. So it depended. Some of these knockers were seen as good knockers that helped you, and others were not. Yeah, I know the whole thing with knockers.
Legendary knockers.
There are good knockers and bad knockers.
Yeah. So but the knocker thing. You were talking about Tolkien earlier.
Yeah.
Tolkien. He got his ideas from things like the knockers. That would have been part of it for his little creatures. Mm. But anyway, they were it depends on who was telling the story, but sometimes they were the ghosts of these old Jews that worked in the mines. Sometimes they were the ghosts of miners that had died in pit disasters in previous centuries or whatever. And they were trying to help the modern day miners trying to save them from disaster if a mine was going to be flooded or pit prop was going to go down. The knocking could have been just for props slipping, or just the odd rock falling. But they genuinely believed that there were these creatures that stayed just out of sight in the mines. But those legends are common in North America too.
Right.
And they actually, when the Cornish miners, they emigrated all over the world, and they took their culture with them. They took their architecture with them. They took their food with them. And you can go to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Mexico, Chile, parts of North America, which I've been to. There's at least 6 Cornish towns here in North America where they fly the Cornish flag. I know, it's incredible. I mean, I've been to 2 of them, and it was fascinating, really fascinating. But they turned the knockers into Tommy knockers, which is where Stephen King got his,
Yeah.
And they were Cornish miners that literally took their customs with them. So, yeah, I mean, I find all that fascinating. It's like
I wouldn't even know what the Cornish flag looked like. What's
really?
It? No,
is it not black?
I don't know.
It's black with a white cross, which is it's to. I probably got this wrong. I should know. It's to represent the tin. It's something to do with the actual tin.
Right.
But yeah, when you're in Cornwall, you can't escape it.
You will have seen it, yeah.
I probably know
definitely.
it if I saw it.
It's quite a cool flag, really.
Yeah.
They have their big day in March, St. Piran's Day. I think I might be wrong. I think it's the 17th. I'm not sure. I think it's the 17th. I mean, all over Cornwall, it's really big.
How do they celebrate that? Is there something sort of unique to Cornwall that they do?
Well, they celebrate on the day with just like I lived in Bude for a while, which is sort of more or less on the border. It's a few miles away from the border with Devon. And they celebrate with just like a walk on the sand and like 5 miles, whatever, and across the cliffs. And they've all got, some of them have got kilts on. They've got the Cornish tartan,
right?
Which I'm not a fan of that. I think that's it doesn't go back that long. Let's just put it like that. It's like a more recent addition to it. But they've got their own clan colours.
Right.
But what else do we do? They've got their own customs, their own special days. You've got in Padstow, you've got the Obios, which is hobby horse to us English, which is when they have this, I suppose you might call it a carnival. It's like, but it goes on all day, and they have this repetitive sort of music played on, I probably got this wrong, accordion-like instrument. And it's just the same tune, basically, played over and over and over all day. But if you like that sort of repetitive, ravey type music, I'm saying this as an old guy now, but I actually quite like that. I like repetitive. I used to like the dance music. Like, I never bought it. I mean, you wouldn't buy it, but I used to listen to it in the car, and it's similar to that. It's like, that same riff over and over, played in various ways, and it's like on a loop, like a permanent loop. And it is like a psychological thing. It's sort of like it's working on different levels. And I think that's what it's all about. They're sort of winding everyone up in a sort of celebratory sort of way. Wow. And they take it so seriously. That's Padstow. Then there's others. There's trying to think of the name of the place. Helston, the Helston Floral Dance, and there's various ceremonies all over Cornwall that sort of celebrate their unique Cornishness.
I'm thinking of like the Wicker Man now.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of pagan background to any of these?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, they were. In fact, we were talking to someone the other day about all this. Actually, I wish I could remember who it was, but yeah. I mean, obviously, the Christian saints arrived in Cornwall mostly from Ireland and France, and they basically converted, or over a period of a couple of 100 years or more, probably, they converted the locals from their sort of pagan ways, I suppose. But they were there long before the Christians arrived, and they're still there. And I think of all the regions in Britain, well, we say England anyway, they are the most sort of in touch with their past. They were never truly subjugated like the rest of us. All got sort of anglicised in various ways. I mean, like you're up in the north. You had what did you have? You had the Danes coming down. I don't know. Did they get into Lancashire and that area?
Not so. Yeah, they found the Querdale Horde. Querdale, am I pronouncing that right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Querdale, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose I guess it's maybe a function of the geography of Cornwall, because it's such an isolated peninsula that maybe insulated them to a degree.
Yeah, they had. So once you start digging into it, I've read quite a few books sort of written by people who are, Cornish nationalists. So I don't think they call themselves that, but they're very, very into the. Because we grow up learning a very anglicised version of events for everything, as you know. And, history is written by the winners sort of thing. But once you start digging into what really went on, and some of the stories that I've heard, I mean, for example, Exeter in Devon, which for anyone listening outside of Britain, England, it's the bordering county, if you like, but in those days, it would have been part of, I think it was called Dumnonia. I'm probably not pronounce that correctly, but so all the Cornish tribes were down there, and these other tribes that were coming in, which we mentioned earlier, they were constantly at war with these people, and they were losing ground all the time, and eventually they ended up to the west of the Tamar River. But in Exeter, which is just the other side of that river, they had they were doing some building back in the 70s, I think it was, the 1970s, and they had to stop work for a while because they found a huge mass grave, and I think they sort of covered it up and sort of said, it was the Black Death or something.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened in the end there, but in this book, they were saying it was very likely to have been like massacres, because this is what these tribes were doing to each other, and they were trying to kill them off. And I'm trying to think of his name. Is it Ethelred? I might have got that wrong. Ethelred.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He was like a real ethnic cleanser, And I mean, like the whole thing with history is it's never really clear cut like there's A and there's B. It's always sort of shades of grey, It's like the people that I don't know what he would have called himself in those days, Ethelred, whatever. The people they were attacking were a mixture of sort of Romano-British stroke Cornish, the original Brits that were pushed west. But he was trying to wipe them out. They thought they were like, I mean, there are writings that survived, but he said they were like, I'm sort of paraphrasing, like filthy scum of the earth, little better than animals, this sort of thing. And that way of thinking has always been in our upper classes, Yeah. They've always had that horrible sort of, holier than thou sort of attitudes to other people, like the Irish,
Yeah, contempt.
And they treated the Cornish just like the Irish. I mean, the Cornish were just as badly treated. But of course, we don't, the victors write the history, don't they? So we get a very sort of sanitized version of what happened. But they were hanging vicars. I mean, like the Prayer Book Rebellion. That was. I'm trying to think. There were two Cornish uprisings, and when you look at English history books, they sort of tie it into other stuff, and they say, "Oh, it's all about taxation," you know. But that was only like a tiny part of it. It was they were trying to subdue the Cornish, and they were trying to change. Because if I got my history right, Henry VIII, as we all know, he ditched Rome and he, you know, made his own church, sort of thing, Church of England. And the Cornish didn't want that. They'd sort of got settled into the old religion, which was like the Catholic faith. And they had all this they had these sort of ancient churches then with all this old, you know, nice windows and objects around the church, which had always been there, you know. And the English came down, and basically they wanted them to adopt this new way of new religion. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And these soldiers would come down and basically go into these Cornish churches and just completely destroy them. And the word got around that this was going on, and one of these guys that came down and started going into a church and destroying it, they basically hacked him to death. And then, of course, the English weren't very happy about that, so they sent the army in. And of course, there was the uprising where they went up to London. And, I mean, that's a story in itself. That's fascinating. It's like they you know, I mean, I don't know. All I know is what I've read, but they were quite naive in a way, because they were like 1,000 years too soon for what they were doing. They were trying to reach an understanding with the royals in London, to sort of say, oh, well, no, we just want, you know, like a peaceful protest, but like 1,000 years too soon. I mean, even now, you know, the stuff that's going on in Trafalgar Square now, it's still not perfect.
No.
But anyway, what happened was during the night, they were on Blackheath. Do you know Blackheath, south of London? The Cornish were camped on Blackheath, sort of overlooking the city. And word came to them from friendly local people that, you know, you better shift because the army are coming. And the English sent out a full-on army, which at the time was like one of the most powerful in the world. Yeah. To attack these ordinary people that had just gone up there because they were passionate about saving their religion and all the rest of it. And they basically, and most of them, I think, just decided to run for it. And they were sheltered by local people. A lot of local people did look after them. You know, didn't have any time for the royals. And... but they hunted them down all the way back to Cornwall. And that's where that grave site comes in, right, because that's possibly a place where they caught a load. Right. I mean, it was like, you know, like persecution on a sort of Second World War German scale, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is something that really interests me, is the sort of hidden history or alternate history.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about Joesph Arimathea or Jesus coming to Cornwall. Things that the mainstream history books just disregard whatsoever. But they're just so intriguing, aren't they? And, you know, if you look at the New Testament, Jesus is born, then zip, nothing for near enough 30 years. What was he doing? Right. And there's all sorts of alternate theories.
So where was he?
There's theories that he went to Alexandria, and that's where he learned about the mysteries and esotericism, and that's where he trained to become a preacher. Or, you know, you get the theories that he travelled with his uncle to Cornwall.
Yeah, I definitely believe both, really. I think definitely. Have you ever heard of an American folk singer called John Prine?
No.
Yeah, John Prine, yeah.
Yeah, he's really cool. He died, actually. He died, didn't he, a few months ago. Very, very good. Just a really nice guy and writes amazing songs. Just really funny, like dry sort of humour. And also he's got quite sentimental in places, but he's really good at it. You know, he's just wonderful songs. But he wrote a song called Jesus, The Missing Years, which is well worth a listen. Because he sort of jokes about it. He sort of says that he hung out in Paris with a few girls and then he met some guy who was into something and he got in with him and then and he sort of just tells this silly story of where he was and it's just very funny.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. I've just started a book. It was the one that Dan Brown ripped off for the Da Vinci Code by two English authors, Lynn Picknett and Clive something. But I've just started, but I just find it so intriguing that people are going back and try and trace these different sort of myths and try and foot them in reality, and it just gives you something to think about. I mean, like the Mary Magdalene one is another one because there's stories of her moving to France after the crucifixion, isn't there?
Yes, yeah.
To near Marseille,
yeah.
I think near Marseille.
Well, she was connected to Brittany as well.
Right.
I'm not quite sure where in Brittany. Yeah, I'm not sure. It could have been Roscoff, somewhere like that. But she's definitely got connections. There's local legends around there.
Yes, there's all these festivals for Mary Magdalene, and they have relics, don't they? There's a town.
That's right, yeah.
I can't remember the name of the town in France, but they have a festival every year, and they have. I mean, it's a fake, but it's meant to be the skull of Mary Magdalene, and they parade it around the square. So there's a definite connection there.
Oh, I think that is the one I think you mentioned Marseille, didn't you? I think it was down that way. I think it was further south that they did that. Yeah. I
just find it so intriguing, And
hidden history is the best, really.
Well, you talk about history being written by the victor before, and just look at the Gospels. We have the four Gospels with which don't agree on certain things, but then they find the Nag Hammadi text and all these Gnostic stuff, and Gospel of Philip saying Jesus was knocking off Mary Magdalene, and then she went to France after the crucifixion. It's like, well, all this stuff was heresy.
Yeah.
It was foot down on it. You can't,
Yeah. Well, it's like I grew up in Church of England because I was actually a choir boy, believe it or not. I was a head chorister and used to sing solos in Guildford Cathedral, like just because every now and again our village would have to go and I think when they were on holiday or something. And at Christmas time, particularly, I used to go and sing these carols. So, I mean, I had an upbringing in the church. And my best mate, who I still know, his father was the local vicar. And, I've heard a lot of stuff since those days about the church and people putting them down and all this. But I can only say that, I actually had a really good upbringing and made a lot of good friends. I had friends across the board. I had friends I lived in this village near Guildford, which had a mixture of, I was on a council estate, but it was a really nice one. It was like the best council estate in the country. So I was quite pampered, really, because we had countryside around us, like 4 miles behind our garden, 4 miles of open countryside, like hills, trees, rivers. But so the whole thing with C of E is like my experience was really good because they weren't like a pushy religion. They just told you these stories for like to teach you how to to do the right thing, sort of basically in given circumstances. And I mean, when they were doing the sermons in those days when we were kids, we were just doing the old finger puppet things in the shadows and but as we got older, I actually became quite interested.
Yeah.
But there was a blend of people in the village of like these posh people who, and I had sort of foot in both camps because I was in the church. I knew a lot of these people, and my people who were like council house people, and some of them were quite sort of tough, old sort of country families. And some weird things happen. It's like, it always makes me laugh when I hear these stories, and you're Northerners, you'll know this, but there's a sort of attitude that the South is soft, and it's like, nope. I mean, I give you an example. Like, even when I was a kid, one of my mates who was in this sort of posh camp, he was in the posh part of the village. He tried to come up to see me. He knew I lived on this estate, and he tried to come up and see me on his bike. He had a brand new Deralia racing bike, and which we couldn't afford. And he got to the bottom of the road, and some local lads who lived on my street basically didn't like the look of him. And they said to him, where are you going? So he said, I'm going to see my mate. And he said, well, you can't come up here. You don't belong here. And it was like, they beat him up. They wouldn't let him up the street because they didn't believe that he was my mate. So it's like, we had little pockets of, and they all had, because I was in the country, they were, I mean, I was the only one who wasn't actually. They all had weapons. They all had rifles. And because they would be out in the fields shooting everything that moved.
Yeah.
This was the 60s. In fact, I actually got shot when I was, how old was I? I don't know, probably 10 or 11. And do you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah. At least we know you made it.
Yeah, it is funny. It is quite funny. So I was over... So behind where we lived, there was, as I say, about 4 miles of countryside, and there was like woods and a river and so on. I was over there one day, like 10 or 11, and I was with this girl who was in my class at school, and possibly one of my sisters, I'm not sure, can't remember now. But we were behind this bush just playing around in this edge of this field. And all of a sudden, we'd seen this guy up on an embankment by the railway line. And we knew who he was as well. He was an older lad. He was like probably 5-6 years older than me, maybe more. And all of a sudden he had his air rifle with him actually. And all of a sudden there was a ba-ting right really close to me. And next thing I know, I've been hit on my arse by a pellet. And I can tell you, it stings. And I knew he did it. I knew it was him. But anyway, it was more like it hurt a bit, it stung a bit, but it wasn't a big deal, It's just like, I thought it was quite funny, really. Mm. But we went home, and as I say, I was only a young lad. Went home, and my mother, I think my sister, blabbed and said, "Oh, Pete, is this guy Pete Fish? Oh, Pete Fish shot him, So she was furious. I wasn't really. I thought it was funny, but she thought she was really, really cross about this. But next thing we know, this guy, and I still know him as well, he comes down to my door and he knocks the door, and I'm upstairs at home, and I can hear him saying to my mum, "Oh, Mrs. Wyatt, I've come to apologise for shooting your son." Right. And my mum was like very, very defensive, like a formidable sort of like no one messed with her, And she was like, she was really tearing him off one, And then she said, and I was embarrassed by this, And then she said, "Mark, come downstairs. Oh, what do you want? Just come down here." And so I had to go down there. And she said, because she'd already seen the damage, it was like a big red welt, right, on my cheek. And she said, "Show him." Well, I don't want to show him, She said, show him. So, oh, God. So I had to show him where the pellet had hit me, right? So, and I was embarrassed, obviously. He was trying not to laugh. He was trying to look sort of, suitably like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Mrs. Wyatt," And I could see him smirking. He was just trying not to laugh. And off he went, and he was just trying to hold it back, just trying not to laugh. But from that moment, and that was like 1969, 70, something like that, from that moment on, because within about 5-6 years, maybe a bit more, I'd start seeing him down the local pub at the end of the road. And because we knew each other, we lived in the same street. And he loved to, at some point in the evening, come over to me on a Friday night or whatever, when everyone's drinking heavily, and it was our local. He would come over and say, "Hello, Mark, how's your bum?" But of course, he would occasionally see me in town too, and of course, people who weren't in on it would assume there was something a bit weird about that, But a sort of hardcore of us all knew what it was, obviously. But it still goes on to this day. And, it's like the longest running joke ever. So, last time I saw him was about, I think, a year ago or so. And, I'm trying to think where I saw him, but it would have been in a pub somewhere. And he basically sort of, I just know as soon as I see him, he's going to ask me, have I recovered yet? Does it still sting?
Oh, dear. It's funny you mentioned about us being Northerners before. Yeah. And I was thinking, I was talking about identity. I think that might be up there, I think that might be part of our identity, I think, for most Northerners.
Well, when I lived in the Northeast, which is obviously a bit higher up than you, they used to call you lot Southerners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Londoners, Northerners, anyone north at Watford Gap, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when I lived in Newcastle, near Newcastle, in a place called, the BT announcer called it Prodher, but the locals called it Pruda.
Yeah, Pruda.
Which means Proud Heights. It was the Normans built a castle there.
Right.
Anyway, that's another story. So I had this mate, I still got this mate up there who's a true Geordie, and oh my God, the stories I could tell you about him and the time. This is the 90s when I was up there. And okay, so there was this, he had a brother who was also obviously a Geordie, and his brother went off on holiday and he had a free season ticket going begging for a couple of weeks. And he said, "Oh, your mate," me, to his brother. He said, "Take your mate along to St James's Park," because, it was difficult to get in the 90s because they were having this really wonderful run.
That's right.
The entertainers, if you remember Andy Cole and Peter Beardsley.
Yeah. Kevin Keegan went manager.
Oh, yeah. Keegan was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I'd love it if we beat them. I'd love it.
I'd love it. I'd love it if we beat them. Yeah. So anyway, he took me along. I think, the first time I went along St James's Park, and I felt a bit out of place being a Southerner in St James's Park with the Geordies. And my mate Ian, obviously a Geordie, I'm following him in through the turnstiles, and it's absolutely packed. They were playing Notts County, and in a League Cup or something. And I tried to, when you get to a turnstiles, the guy on the turnstiles asked me a question, but I didn't understand what he said because I'm a Southerner and he's a Geordie, and I was new to it. I hadn't been up there that long, I think.
This is to stop fans going in the wrong end, isn't it? I remember this. Security questions.
Yeah. Well, the question he asked me, I honestly didn't understand a word he was saying because it was like another language to me. Yeah. And he spoke very quickly. And I thought, oh, God. So I said, "Oh, sorry, pardon, I didn't hear you," hoping I'd catch it the second time round, because I couldn't. I still didn't get it. And he was getting crosser and crosser. And the guys behind me, who I didn't know, were like, "Come on, mate, get out the bloody way," or whatever, And then luckily my mate, who was ahead of me, realised I wasn't behind him anymore, and he turned around and he looked through the crowd to see me still stood there having this discussion with this bloke I couldn't understand. And he realised there was a problem, and he sort of came back through the crowd. And because, part of the problem I didn't mention was that there was a little picture on the card, and it didn't look anything like me. At the time I'd really short hair and, was really clean shaven. And this picture, his brother was this hairy beast, like 4 stone heavier than me or something, Yeah. So anyway, my mate comes back and he said, what are you playing at? What's going on? Because he didn't really understand. I didn't understand one of his not acquaintance, but local. And then basically he said to this guy, he said, "Oh, you'll have to forgive my mate." He said, "I can't do the accent. It's like, you'll have to forgive me, mate. Like, he's a bit special," or something like that. And I thought, "Oh, thanks a lot," but it was literally, I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And this happened a few times when I was in the north, like the far north. But eventually you get used to it. You sort of, they speak a lot quicker than we do. I'd probably have problems now if I was up there again now, because I've sort of got out of practice.
It's a weird thing about this country, isn't it? Considering how geographically, it's only a small country, but you've got so many different accents and dialects. Like we always talk about the barm. There's the barm cake, the bread roll. Everyone, if you travel 50 miles, there's a different name for the same thing.
Oh, right, yeah.
Barm cake, bread roll, bap.
Oh, baps, yeah. There was a down in Cornwall somewhere. There was one of these roadside food trucks, and it was called Nice Baps.
We're going back to knockers again.
Legendary knockers.
Hey dear. Hey, well, on that note, Mark, we're rocking up on time already.
Yeah. Are we?
No. We're going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah.
It was fun. I enjoyed that.
That was great. Cheers, Mark.
Nice to talk with you.
And you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great.
Nice.
Sorry I didn't let you get a word in.
That's perfect.
That's great.
That's kind of the idea, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm very shy and retiring.
Where's the best place for people to follow you? I
don't really I don't have a website anymore. I stopped doing that some time ago, really. They can contact me by email if anyone wants to. I don't doubt that they'd want to, really. But my books are on Amazon.
Yes, the links will be in the show notes for
thank you, I
Spirit
appreciate
of Cornwall.
that. Yeah, I mean the reviews are, I can't sit here and brag about the books. I could do, but I won't, because it's but yeah, if you look at the reviews are fair, unless anyone's been on there recently and slagged me off, I don't know. But they're pretty good. I've got some good reviews on there, which I'm quite pleased with. The books are they're not just another list of ghost stories and UFO stories. They're all genuine witness experiences. Some of them are my own, and I've sort of tried to tie in a lot of history. So they're not just another random list of supernatural stories. There is a sort of theme running through them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of culture in it as well. There's a lot of culture, a lot of history.
A lot of stories you've collected yourself in your time down there, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I actually experienced some weird things. If we had more time, I'd tell you, but I lived in a property in Bude. Well, it's a long story, but I ended up in this place, living in this place as a temporary measure, and with about 8 or 9 sort of younger, well, sort of your age probably. Yeah,
20, 25.
I don't know. I have no idea. But they're all young lads, sort of compared to me, and a few young women, and basically I'd start hearing all these stories about this ghost in this house, and had I seen it, and so on. And then they didn't even know at the time that I was writing about this sort of stuff, or I was interested in it. So I sort of landed in the right place at the right time. And it was a surfer he only died in 2012, and he'd been seen many times by different people around the house, like in more recent years. And I got to interview all these people, and it was just an amazing house. It's a surfing community. So, and everyone there either surfs or plays rugby.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is in Cornwall.
Yeah.
And basically I actually possibly, I mean, I couldn't swear to it, but I believe I saw the guy myself. Wow. And I definitely experienced the feeling that he was around, but I think I actually saw him as well. he had a way of just popping up and sort of letting himself be known. I mean, people saw him in a nearby lane, bloke in a van who had actually, these were his friends. These were actually his friends who knew him. I didn't know him. And they actually saw him after he died. And they swear to it. So, yeah, just that story alone it's amazing. And
yeah, we didn't even...
Sorry.
We've not even done any spooky stories, Mark.
I know.
You're gonna have to come back. You're gonna have to come back further down the line.
Yeah. Well, I'll be happy to come back. It was fun. It was fun.
It'd be great. Great
Cool.
to be on again.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to wrap up. Just hang on the line for us, Mark, while we play ourselves out,
Will do.
and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. See you in a minute. Right, then we're back.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
So I chat with Mark Anthony Wyatt.
Yeah.
How cool was that? I really enjoyed that.
It was good. It's nice to get some feedback about our intros as well. Mark thinks it was really smooth this week. So,
Yes.
Producers, please let us know. Have any further notes?
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
I could listen to them stories for hours.
I forgot to ask him about what weird stuff happened on top of that granite rock he was sat on.
Yeah.
He never said, did he?
Oh, teased us. We'll have to have that.
He did.
Save it till next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
hopefully we'll check in with Mark further down the line and
I
Do an
think so.
episode live from Padstow.
Right then, have you? Oh yeah, so his books. Check out the link in the show notes for the Spirit of Cornwall volumes 1 and 2. I'll put the Amazon links in the show notes. So yeah, check that shit out. Have you got your feather duster ready?
Yeah.
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
I'm a blind man. Housekeeping. What do we need for housekeeping? Become a producer and support the show. There are multiple ways.
How can you do it, Ben?
Housekeeping.
You send us some shit.
iTunes reviews we want.
Yeah, iTunes reviews, 5 stars.
Yeah, rate and review us wherever you're listening. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Do we accept Yelp reviews? Are they still a thing? I think we'll take them. 2 Yelp reviews for every iTunes review, I think is the going rate.
Check out the Amish loot chest and buy yourself a wicked hoodie.
Wicked smart.
All proceeds from the merch store and donations are going to St. Catherine's Hospice for the month of
Whoa, hang on a minute.
for the month of December.
From the merchandise as well?
Yeah,
That's our main source of income.
Oh,
I can stand it for a month. It's fine.
have we got a totalizer?
No. How else can you become a producer? Send us news clips, video clips, media, news articles, memes for Instagram. Contribute to the show. Give us content.
Contribute.
Yes.
And you will be credited in the show notes. You can put it on your LinkedIn. Looks nice on your LinkedIn. Producer of Amish Inquisition, episode 162.
How do you become an executive producer?
That requires further discussion off air because I have the answer, but it requires discussion.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, blimey.
What's the number one way to become a producer?
Toss us a fucking coin. Donate a kidney.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that
I'm a blind man. Toss us a coin. Go to the armisinquisition.com, find the PayPal button and toss us a coin. And again, for the month of December, that's going to St. Catherine's Hospice, a worthy cause. So, get in the habit for December and then, just keep it going in January. And support the show.
Set up a direct debit. It's easy. Forget about it.
Yeah, so better thank the producers, hadn't I, for episode 162. This is a first, because you know who the first producer on the list is?
A lady?
Mark Anthony Wyatt.
Oh.
I think this is our...
Meta.
He's not the first... Actually, Graham from Grey America has been a producer as well. But I think this is the first time we've had a guest be a guest and producer in the same week, because Mark's been sending us some videos and stuff. So who's on the list? We've got Mark Anthony Wyatt, Graham Dunlop from the Grey America Show, Richard Mounsey, Gav Scott, Tambarista 2020, Full Metal Keto as Fuck, Panhead, Raymond Jet Squad, and Anonymous. Thanks for your support for another week. You're literally
the best.
The best, mate.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil, that they are.
Yeah.
So amazing. In their love.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that
I'm a blind man.
The dwarf, the
currant, the grape,
the
homophobe,
the wings,
the asthma,
the
corn pop, cons,
the number 11,
the blind man, the fallen on the horizon,
the cripple, and the mother of...
from hell.
I don't get it, never will.
Woo! They should have run! Look at them now! They're dead!
Yeah, slipped a bit of the drifter in there.
Yeah.
So thanks for your support for another week. It's been great. We've had loads of stuff. I can't use it all. So there's that much. So I have to ration it down.
Yeah.
Woo! Look at them fall. All right. Half, bring a sword. Right, what do we move on to?
COVID-19 news.
Have you got the breaking news though?
COVID-19 news.
Put on your fucking muzzle if you go to the shop.
The magic vaccine.
A big fat shot in the ass
from hell.
Oh! It's just, super painful.
Like a judgment day and terminating mode.
More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
2 million people have to die.
This is such a crock of shit.
This is Sonny Pickering!
Who the fuck's that?
Yeah, me!
What's the breaking COVID-19 news, Irish Ben?
Rudy Giuliani has tested positive for COVID-19.
All right.
Is that it?
So famous.
I thought there was going to be some sort of world-changing.
Yeah.
Societies across the world have risen up and said enough of this fucking madness.
No, it's just some shit.
Well, unless you've been living under a rock this week, the big news is the Pfizer vaccine, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Pfizer vaccine has been approved by is it the MHRA or the MRHA?
MHRA. Medicines and Health Regulatory Authority.
Yes, the first Western country to approve a vaccine. Yeah. And the head of the NIH, Dr. Anthony Fauci, National Institute for Health, and the head of the COVID task force in the United States, he went on CBS and said this.
Why are the Brits first?
In all fairness to so many of my UK friends, they kind of ran around the corner of the marathon and joined it in the last mile. I think that would be a good metaphor for
fucking chucklehead, isn't he? You can't stop laughing all the way through it.
For it, Major, because they really rushed through that approval. The FDA, the United States of America Food and Drug Administration, is the gold standard of regulation. They're doing it in a very careful way, appropriately. Because if we did anything that was cutting corners and rushing, we have enough problem with people being skeptical about taking a vaccine anyway. If we had jumped over the hurdle here quickly and inappropriately to gain an extra week or a week and a half, I think that the credibility of our regulatory process would have been damaged and we would have had more people. I love the Brits. They're great. They're good scientists. but they just took the data from the Pfizer company, and instead of scrutinizing it really, really carefully, they said, okay, let's approve it. That's it. And they went with it. In fact, they were even rather severely criticized by their European Union counterparts who were saying, that was kind of a hot dog play.
Pretty scathing, Dr. Fauci there.
Dog. I think he's right. The FDA historically always ask for raw data for these things, for vaccine approvals.
You mean they don't?
Whereas the MHRA tend to just review the reports. I mean, it's the same data, but the FDA do seem to go into a lot more detail. And he's right; it is the gold standard of regulation in the world. So,
okay,
he did apologise for that, didn't he? Afterwards.
So let's fast forward 24 hours later.
Spoiler alert.
First of all, there really has been a misunderstanding, and for that, I'm sorry and I apologize for that. I do have great faith in both the scientific community and the regulatory community at the UK, and anyone who knows me and my relationship with that over literally decades know that's the case. The point that I was really trying to make, and I did not make it appropriately well, and that's the reason why I welcome the opportunity to get on your show and say that I do have confidence. It came out wrong, and that was not the way I meant it to be. In the United States, there is such a considerable amount of tension of pushing back on the credibility of the safety and of the efficacy that if we in the United States had done it as quickly as the UK did, and that's no judgment on the way the UK did it. And even though my statements did come across looking that way.
Yeah, cutting corners, being fast and loose, not going over the raw data. Anyway,
hot dog
that if we had, for example, approved it yesterday or tomorrow, there likely would have been pushback on an already scrutinizing society that has really,
this is interesting.
I think in some respects in the United States, too much skepticism about the process.
Too much skepticism.
Yeah, so just take it.
Interesting choice of words. Yeah, he does go on to say that it's essentially a foregone conclusion that it will pass and you will take it and you will be fine.
By the time the majority of the people in the UK have the vaccine, it will have passed in the States as well. So it'll catch up. I don't want to say it's only the over 80s and whoever's having it in the first couple of weeks that are going to be impacted by whatever the speed is. But I suppose that is the case, really. I mean, I think it'll be really quick. And the EMA, the European guys, they're looking at December the 29th, roughly, for approval.
I just found his choice of words interesting, that they were too sceptical. I mean, I don't know. Are either of you sceptical about the vaccine?
I think because it's just new, yeah.
Because it's a new technology.
Not, but as a member of the scientific community in Great Britain, I'm not.
You're not sceptical.
But, I've got more experience with these things, I guess, and I do not begrudge anyone who is skeptical. And I get what you're saying, that too much skepticism is a bit of a weird thing, like a
anti-scientific.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any skepticism about anything, I mean, that's probably enough to be concerned about, right? There's no too much or too little.
For anyone who isn't skeptical, such as yourself, Ben, I've got some advice for you. Whatever you do, don't Google Pfizer bribery or Pfizer racketeering. Don't Google Pfizer Nigeria. Don't Google Pfizer dengue fever. That's DENGUE.
Yeah.
Don't Google that. Don't Google Pfizer withhold data or Pfizer illegal drug trials, because that won't do anything for your lack of skepticism.
No, I won't.
Good. This best be safe. Right, let's move on from the vaccine to Health Secretary Matt Hancock. He was up in front of What is it? Your girlfriend's first proper boyfriend with a car?
Yeah.
He was up in front of the Health Select Committee this week. And the question of, there's been this sort of question about the terminology of following the science. Are you following the science or guided by the science? Because following the science, the scientists aren't accountable to the electorate. It's the old advisors advise, ministers decide thing. So to be blindly following the science gives the politicians an out. They can throw the scientists under the bus. It all goes wrong. So it's an important thing to sort of clarify. So here's what Matt Hancock had to say to the Select Committee.
Oh, God.
I always try to take the approach of being guided by the science.
You did say follow the science a number of times.
I may have said it colloquially, but the approach that I took and far more rigorously tried to describe was being guided by the science.
Anyway, here's what he actually said.
We're being very clear in following the science. We've been following scientific and medical advice. We've followed the science in terms of international travel. The science which said that, which we followed. We did take scientific advice. We followed the science throughout.
You followed the science.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's going to be a lot of book passing coming in a year or two.
Yeah.
When the full collateral damage becomes, you start sweeping things under the carpet and all of a sudden you have a mountain with a carpet over the top of it. And there's going to be a lot of difficult questions asked, and these guys are going to try and wriggle out of everything. And the politicians are going to pin it on the scientists, and the scientists are going to say, well, we just give advice and politicians decide, which is true.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting. I don't know.
They will. I mean, there'll be data releases, and the scientists are most likely will say the data is here for all to see.
The problem is when you get chief scientific advisor intentionally using misleading data, and if you were being charitable, you could say misleading the public. I'd call it lying.
They're playing politics, aren't they? They've got too close. They've flown too close to the sun.
There was an interesting interview with someone, I can't remember who it was, with a politician, and he brought up, and the interviewer brought up someone like Carl Hennigan, who has a different approach to, and all he could say is, well, he's not on stage. He's not on stage. Senator Gupta, well, she's not on stage. So they're in a fucking hole, basically, and these scientists aren't helping themselves, and they're not going to help the scientific community as a whole. I think SAGE should be completely disbanded and reconstituted.
Yeah?
Personally, but that's another...
On the regular, once a month.
Yeah. Anyway, should we move on to another story from this week? Well, it's actually from last week, but we didn't have time to play it. Do you remember the miracle drug, Remdesivir?
I remember that.
The World Health Organization could not be any clearer in its advice today. It does not recommend the use of antiviral drug Remdesivir to treat hospitalized coronavirus patients, no matter how sick they are. The warning comes as part of the organisation's regular review into COVID-19 treatments. It says its findings indicate that the drug doesn't help improve survival rates.
So this is the WHO have said, whoops, no, don't use Remdesivir. In fact, regular listeners to this podcast will know that we said this months ago, that it doesn't improve outcomes whatsoever. But money talks.
The World Health Organization could not be any clearer in its advice today. It does not recommend the use of antiviral drug Remdesivir to treat hospitalized coronavirus patients, no matter how sick they are. The warning comes as part of the organisation's regular review into COVID-19 treatments. It says its findings indicate that the drug doesn't help improve survival rates or reduce the need for medical ventilation in patients with breathing difficulties. The announcement will prompt some awkward questions for health officials in the United States, who just over a month ago approved the use of remdesivir for sick coronavirus patients. The maker of the drug, Gilead, had earlier applied for emergency use of remdesivir to America's Food and Drug Administration. That application was approved, and since then, some hospitalised patients have been receiving the medicine as part of their treatment.
What was it, the gold standard, the FDA?
Yeah.
Yeah, they approved it, didn't they? And 3 northern monkeys on a shitty podcast knew that this thing didn't work, but somehow it got emergency authorization from the FDA. Funny.
Was it first used for Ebola? When we had the Ebola outbreak a couple of years ago? People were worried about that. That's when I first heard remdesivir, because
it's a fairly new drug, isn't it?
Tamiflu was the swine flu previous, before the Ebola pandemic.
It's 1,900 quid for a 5-day course. About a week before this announcement from the WHO, the EU just did a $1 billion deal with Gilead for it. Billion euros, sorry.
Wow.
Gets you thinking, doesn't it?
Mm. That's what makes the world go round.
It certainly does when it comes to pharmaceutical companies.
It's just desperation, isn't it? I think people are just buying up stuff.
No, it was a concerted campaign from the US media. If you digest a lot of US media, they were plugging this drug and plugging it and plugging it and plugging it. And that probably forced the hand of the FDA to approve it for emergency use.
And who knew that the Gilead had taken over from Donald Trump's administration?
I've handmaidens, thanks.
Okay, moving on. Commonly in this section of the show, we've been going through a lot of the unintended consequences of lockdowns. And some of the, well, not unintended, but fucking obvious consequences of lockdowns as well. I've got a new one. I've got a new one this week, one that we haven't heard before. This is from Ivor Cummins, again, the Fat Emperor. Mm-hmm. He was interviewing Dr. Malcolm Kendrick last week, I think it was. And they were talking about the impact on care homes. You know, how we seeded the virus into care homes, sending sick people from hospital with coronavirus into care homes. Sort of anti-lockdown, essentially. And, you know, they go on to say that the Swedes did it as well, but at least they had the grace to admit what they'd done, whereas we won't in this country, obviously. But this is a new one. I hadn't heard this story from Spain and the care homes.
And a lot of the other countries that had huge rates, the Italians, and one of the things that happened in Italy was that when they were about to lock down, a whole number of the staff were from Eastern Europe who didn't want to get stuck, so they headed back to Romania and Hungary and these countries. And the care homes were absolutely devastated. There was one care home in Spain where all the care staff just left, and there were a number of the residents just starved to death. That's a direct result of lockdown. And, you know, whilst everyone's running around pretending this maybe didn't happen, but we know it happened. Just so, that's just another, if you like, thing to throw into the mix.
This is something we didn't touch on, was it? The exodus of care home staff, because we know a lot of them are from Eastern Europe.
No, I didn't think about sort of like the staff leaving, but there are a lot of Eastern European staff, aren't there, that staff these kinds of things. But I did remember that story being on the news, on the BBC News, about they come across this care home in Madrid, a huge one. And they'd gone in and there was just loads of dead people in the rooms. They couldn't figure out why.
Goodness.
And that's what had happened, basically. All the staff just left and they died.
They starved.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so unhumane, some of the shit that's going on. And, you know, we're not blaming the care home staff. You know, I would probably do the same thing if I was, you know, if I had a work visa in a foreign country. I was just there to make money, try and improve the lives of my own family, and then I hear that there's a lockdown coming in 2 weeks, which could last for how long? Who knows? You know, your first instinct would be to go back home, wouldn't it? But again, it's the lack of foresight.
I think it is, isn't it? And I think at the beginning it felt a lot different to what it did now, doesn't it? Once you know actually the nature of the virus or whatever.
Yeah. I meant to get something ready. I forgot to get it.
Is it your Star Wars Lego advent calendar?
Oh, very nice. What have you got there? What was behind the door today?
Number 6. I think it was the Razor Crest.
Now then, we had a dispute before you logged on, Ben.
Yeah.
I believe, and I haven't Googled this, that Boba Fett's ship was called Slaver 1.
Slave 1, I think.
I wasn't disagreeing with you. I was just saying that this was called Razor Crest.
Is that an A-wing or a snowspeeder, Matt?
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what that one is, to be honest with you.
It's like an A-wing.
Might be. I don't think I've built that one correctly. It's very hard. You don't get proper instructions.
What? Well,
I think
Scepter.
I think that's the one that Moff Gideon flies.
Was it Mandalorian? Oh, yeah, I suppose you got the razor.
It's a mixture, I think, because I think this must be... I think that's Luke, isn't it? Young Luke.
Young Luke.
And then I don't know who this is, unless it's that one from... I think that's the one from... what's it called?
Green Lantern.
Yeah. Oscar Isaac, whatever his name is, in the films.
Right.
I've got sorry to break. I've just found the thing I was looking for. I got sent a graphic this week, and it's from the Workplace Mental Health Institute, and it's entitled 15 Signs You May Be in an Abusive Relationship.
Oh, God.
So, let's see if any of these ring a bell. Number 1, stop you seeing your friends and family. Number 2, won't let you go out without permission. Number 3, tell you what to wear, like over your face.
Like a fucking muzzle.
Number 4, monitor your phone or emails. Number 5, control the finances or won't let you work.
Oh.
Sounds familiar. Number 6, control what you read, watch and say.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, monitor everything you do. Hello, track and trace app. Number 8, punish you for breaking the rules, but the rules keep changing. That sounds familiar.
Oh my God.
What tier are we in today? Number 9, tell you it's for your own good and that they know better. You can't even write this shit. Number 10, don't allow you to question it. Well, last time I checked, you aren't allowed to protest in this country in numbers more than 2.
2 is, isn't it now? Yeah,
so don't allow you to question it, I think, is that one. Tell you you're crazy and no one agrees with you. You're a fucking tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. You think Bill Gates is going to inject you with a nanochip. Oh, you're crazy. Call your names or shame you for being stupid or selfish. Now, this is really insipid because they get the population to do this for them. You fucking selfish prick. No, all you have to do is wear a mask. Stop being so selfish.
I think they do it themselves, to be honest with you, don't they?
Yeah, but it pervades the society. Gaslight you, challenge your memory of events and make you doubt yourself. Dismiss your opinions. And number 15, play the victim. If things go wrong, it's all your fault. If you do a really good job of locking down, things will be normal by Christmas. Oh, no, it turns out that, no, some people just aren't following the rules and we're going to have to do this all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I think we're in an abusive relationship with our government.
Isn't that always the case? I've got to mention when Charlie Robinson was on, that when he was talking about sort of like the state taking over the media or whatever it was, the state's influence on the media, was that changing the rules by Ofcom in that basically only scientists are allowed to go on to mainstream news, are allowed to sort of have to kind of agree with the government's line, basically. And sort of like if Channel 4 had someone on, say for example that Mike Eden, if they had him on and he was saying what he was saying, they would potentially get fined for it, for having someone who didn't. So the only exception is that guy, that cancer guy,
Carol Sikora.
Yeah, apparently he name checked in that Mike Eden. He said he's the only one that they've allowed on.
Does that apply just to state broadcasters, or
I don't know? Maybe it's all.
I wouldn't have thought so.
News will have anyone on.
Well, Channel 4 are split.
Yeah, it's advertising funded thing, isn't it? National broadcast or whatever, I don't know.
We should say, just going back to Charlie Robinson, his podcast Macroaggressions hit number 1 in the US iTunes charts this week.
Well done, Charlie.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well done.
I won't want to take credit for it, but you're welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, mate.
Or shall we tip to my video?
Two great minds of podcasters. Number 1 in the USA and number 1 in the British Virgin Isles.
Absolutely, yeah. Key demographics.
Where all the money is in the Virgin Isles.
That's a good
offshore.
Anyway, let's get off COVID and do some happier stuff.
Oh, good.
We're in December now. And you know what that means, don't you? The same Christmas. Thing. It comes round every December.
Are you going to do a Christmas jingle?
You scumbag, you mugger, cheap, lousy.
Radio 1.
Say words, anything. Radio 1.
I was just waiting for the rest of the song.
Well, there's a controversy every.
There's a pregnant pause in the middle of that song.
Is it because are you not allowed to say faggot? Is that what?
Yeah, there's a scandal every year, isn't there? When this song comes back on the radio.
Is it every year?
Yeah, it happens every year now.
Oh, right. I know Radio 1 are playing the censored version, and Radio 2, 3, not Radio 3, the other ones.
I think they're
playing the standard version.
I think it's up to the DJs on Radio 2. I think they can play whichever they like, the sanitized version or the original.
I thought faggot was, unless you're talking about those little sausage things, a term of a swear word.
A term of affectionment.
A term of a little fag.
I mean, it is on building sites. It's a term of affectionment.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. I don't know. Where do you stand on it? Do you censor it or not?
No.
I would probably thought it would be censored pre-Watershed, because we have Watershed, don't we, here, in that after 9 o'clock you can swear, but before you can't.
Yeah, you don't want to be dropping kids off at the playground and one of them's going, "Come on here, you lousy faggot."
Yeah, basically. You scumbag and lazy faggot.
Cheap slut.
Oh, dear. I can see an argument for that, to do it pre-Watershed.
But then afterwards, no. Yeah. But then, like, which one do I listen to? Radio 4. They swear in the day. They say shit and bitch quite often in the dramas.
The
in the middle of the day.
Is filth.
Yeah. Sometimes they say shit and faggot.
I've heard F-bombs in the day on Radio 4.
Really?
Have you?
Yeah, in dramas.
They have different rules, don't they, apparently, for Radio 4?
Young kids don't listen to it, I guess.
Yeah, only intellectuals who can handle that kind of profanity.
Yeah. Listening to What's His Face, he used to do Dragon's Den on Drive Time, whatever it's called. Did the intro.
Evan Davies.
Evan. Hi, my name's. What's my name? Evan. And it's time to drive. No, drive time. He's awful. Get him off.
Spit it out, you lousy faggot. Oh, anyway, Eamon and Ruth are leaving this morning.
Oh,
and Eamon, I love Eamon.
Did you? Well, guess who won the propaganda war then? In that particular battle.
Yeah, well, you can't beat coming out, can you?
No, exactly.
It's a nuke.
Yeah,
it's like a nuclear bomb, isn't it?
How come we didn't? The only thing it doesn't work against is
child molestation. The old
Spacey.
The Spacey effects, yeah. It didn't,
the Spacey defense.
It's like a chess move, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just come out.
The Queen's Gambit. Works on many levels, that one.
It does. Oh, fuck. I'm going to miss Eamon because he's always putting his foot in it. And there was no exception this week. He was talking to Ruth Jones from Gavin and Stacey. I think he just wants to finger her, basically.
Oh, no.
Good fortune of Gavin and Stacey if there was a Christmas special. Again, like last week, last year, whatever. But we don't know. That and much more to ask Ruth Jones about her book, which we're... What do you do with a book? Do you finger through a book or flick through? We're flicking through your book. We're flicking through your book. Ruth
Keep flicking.
I will do. Listen, we're going to flick a bit more. We'll be back with you right after this.
I can just see the producer in the ears going, Ruth, shut him up! Ruth, shut him up! Got to commercial!
Brilliant.
Oh, man. We're fingering, we're flicking through your fucking fingering you.
Love it. Your fag, you fucker. Get away from her, you bitch.
Get away from her, you bitch. Anyway, moving on. I think this might be my favourite story of the year so far.
Ooh.
A local election in Namibia has caught the attention of the world. Why? A man named Adolf Hitler has won a sweeping majority. But the world does not have any reason to fear him. Unlike his namesake, Adolf Hitler from Namibia has no plans for world domination.
So a guy called Adolf Hitler.
It's a relief.
It is a relief, yeah. He's won a sweeping majority, Adolf.
He's going to create the Fourth Reich in Namibia.
Let's find out. Let's hear more about him.
This man probably has the worst name that one could ask for. But Adolf Hitler Unona is not a Nazi. Neither is he German, or in any way related to the real Hitler. The notorious dictator who ruled over Germany till 1945. So, who is Adolf Hitler Unona? He is a newly elected councillor in Namibia. Unona won the election with 85% of the vote, and won space in leading international publications across the world. It's a little too late for Adolf Hitler Unona to change his name. He's 54, and he does have a sense of humor about his situation. Speaking to a German newspaper, he said, "It doesn't mean that I'm striving for world domination. My father named me after this man. He probably doesn't understand what Adolf Hitler stood for."
He doesn't know. It's a bit random, isn't it, to pick Adolf Hitler without knowing who the guy was?
Unless it's like hidden history, and the Russians didn't shoot him, or he didn't shoot himself. Sorry, the Russians didn't burn him. And he went to Namibia.
You know, I've been trying to get Gerard Williams on the podcast. He's a Nazi hunter.
Oh, right.
Who was tracing, because, you know, the evidence for his death, Hitler's death, is fucking shaky. The Russian evidence for it. And, you know, in fact, that Al Pacino, that show on Amazon Prime, that was based on the same thing. I only watched the first season. It was a bit gash.
But at least they got them, didn't they, in the 60s and the 70s?
Yeah, Nazis escaping to South America, Argentina. It's
Argentina was a big place, wasn't it? In Chile, I think.
The book is called Grey Wolf, Gerard Williams' book. And, you know, it's posited the theory that Hitler actually got away on a U-boat.
Oh, I've heard this story, I think.
Yeah, and made it to South America. There was a TV show on it that Gerard was in, like 10 years ago, maybe.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was looking promising, and then radio silence, so I'd love to talk to him about that stuff.
Oh, did he listen to the podcast?
That's probably what it is. That's usually what happens, isn't it? Fuck! God, how are we going to get around this? Yeah. Anyway, what's the most embarrassing thing to buy from a shop?
The Daily Mail.
The Guardian.
Ball gag.
Ball gag.
Ball gag. Gimp mask.
Condoms was one, I remember from my youth.
A jazz mag.
Prostate stimulator.
Yeah, I'd order that online, maybe.
I thought we were talking pre-internet.
What about a solitary cucumber?
Well, that's fine.
Well, if you have any, worries about purchasing a solitary cucumber, I have a tip here from one of our Antipodean friends, which was sent by Gav Scott.
Okay.
Just got back from the shops, right, and I had to go up there and I had to get one cucumber. So I thought, fuck, this is a bit sus. So I bought a big tub of lube to go with it, so the lady at the counter didn't think I was a fucking vegan.
Good
one.
Good sass.
Good.
Fucking vegan. There's something about the Australian accent, isn't there?
It's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, I wonder how it, because they're all sort of ex-convicts, aren't they? So I wonder how it developed, the Australian accent.
Probably like jail talk, isn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, something like that. We haven't had an Australian on.
No,
we've had Americans, Canadians, Polish. Have we had
three nationalities.
Austrian, Rudolph.
Yes.
Yeah, Austrian. Yeah.
South Africa.
Dutch.
Dutch?
You had a Dutch witch, didn't we?
Yeah.
Georgia Van Ralt.
Yeah.
Dutch heritage. I think she's from England. But,
whatever.
Yeah, all right.
Fine. Studied in Amsterdam.
So, yeah, we need to track down an Australian to get on the show, don't we?
Yeah.
I'll say.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a time issue there, though.
How far ahead are they? It depends where you are, doesn't it? It's that big.
Isn't it 23 hours, no?
Oh, that's perfect.
That's fine. It's an hour behind. No, it's 12, isn't it?
12.
I think they're opposites. So if we do it at 8, it'll be 8 a.m. for them.
That's all right.
Which should be fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
We forgot to wish our American listeners a happy Thanksgiving last week.
Oh, fuck 'em.
Kick out the English.
You know what happens immediately after Thanksgiving, don't you?
Black Friday, is it?
Mr. President, it's an honor to have you on the line with us today. What happened over your Thanksgiving?
And what happened, dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps. I was called by the biggest people. Congratulations, sir. You watched the biggest dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over. It's over. And then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps. And I'm sure you felt that way.
Oh, it's
Can I be a producer?
Why?
I sent that video, didn't I?
Yeah, it was in the chat.
Nope.
Too late, Matt.
No, I clicked on your thing and it said video not available.
Oh.
So I found that compilation. Maybe next week. Maybe next week I can be a producer.
Damn it.
Do you want to add anything before we go?
No, don't think so.
Nearly Christmas. Has everyone bought the Secret Santa gifts?
I've got a bit of mine.
A bit? Right.
No, not even looked. Too busy.
I've ordered some things, but one thing is yet to come. Some other things have come.
Oh, I was just going to send it directly to the recipient.
Yeah, I thought about that, and then I forgot. And it'd come like in 3 different packages as well.
Okay. Oh, that just adds to the incitement. Incitement?
The incitement.
It's Christmas.
How would you know not to open it, though? That's the thing.
Because it would be addressed to Amish Phil.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes. That would be good thinking.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Oh, well. Never mind. Okay, so, I don't know. Should we fuck off?
Yeah. Who's on next week?
T.J. Branham, the author of the Lockwood Code.
Excellent.
Oh, the book.
Yeah, the 19th century author Ingersoll Lockwood, who wrote about Donald Trump and the death of George Floyd and BLM.
Yeah.
Ah! It's going to be weird.
Yeah.
Check that out, you fuckers. Come back next week.
Yeah. Leave some reviews and donate to St. Catherine's Hospice and buy things.
Yeah. Build back better.
Yeah.
Wakanda forever.
Yeah.
Epstein didn't kill himself. Sayonara. We'll see you next week.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Ta-ra.
Thank you. This may be the most important speech I've ever made.
Well, it's about time.
It was a massive dump.